So welcome to this new video. We'll finish translating the introduction of the video that we are studying. So good luck and enjoy.
みんなチャンネル登録してね
今日は姫ちゃんの学校のある日の一日を動画でやってみようと思います。はいちょっと現実とは違うんだけど面白おかしくやってみるよ。
ちょっと現実とは違うんだけど面白おかしくやってみるよ。So once again, spot the grammar that you know and the grammar that you don't know. So here you should have two things that are bothering you. The first one is kedo. 違うんだけど. But this is going to be really quick. Kedo equals but. So it is used to connect two clauses that you connect with but. So yes, indeed, kedo is more or less the same as ga. So let's see a few examples. The basic pattern will then be first clause plus kedo plus second clause, which in English will be first clause but second clause. So you see that's really easy because here you have no inversion, no anything, it's almost literal. As for the difference between kedo and ga, for the moment you can remember that kedo is used in oral speech, while ga is rather used in written language and in more formal situations. So be careful because when we say oral speech, it doesn't mean that it's casual speech, okay? So you can use kedo and be polite. It's completely possible. It's just that if you read, for example, the newspaper, you won't see any kedo because it's part of written language. So kedo is used when you talk, not when you write. So if you listen to everyday Japanese, you will barely hear ga. You'll encounter it from time to time, but it's kedo that you will hear all the time. So let's see different sentences where you use ga, where you use kedo. It's just to kind of show you the different registers that you can use. ビールは好きではありませんが、お茶は好きです。That's the kind of sentences that you can find in a textbook. So ビールは好きではありません。I don't like beer. が but お茶は好きです。I like tea. So here it's either kind of a written sentence, either it's said in quite a very formal context. Then you can have the casual way of saying this. ビールは好きじゃないけど、お茶は好き. So casual plus oral. So I don't like beer, but I like tea. Same thing, but without the politeness and it's spoken language. Then, 家に帰りたいですが、仕事があります. So same thing, kind of a typical textbook sentence. So 家に帰りたいです. I want to go home. が but 仕事があります. I have work. And then just to show you that you can use kedo and be polite, 家に帰りたいですけど、仕事があるんです. So you see that I transformed arimasu into arundesu. So don't pay so much attention to this. It's just to show you that the same sentence can be formulated in several different ways. In Japanese, you always have dozens of ways to say the same thing. So for the moment, you just need to get used to it and it will be perfect. So basically, the point is that ga and kedo, you can translate them the same way. there is a difference concerning the language level between the two of them. For the moment, you just have not to be disturbed by having biru wa suki janai instead of biru wa suki de wa arimasen. If right away you know that it's like the same meaning, it's just that it's spoken language or written language, then it's fine. Okay, so let's go back. Before kedo, you have nda. So nda, we've already studied it. This time we're going to get a little bit more in details. Comes from no, it's a contraction of no. And be careful, of course, it's not the no that you use to connect two nouns. It's what we call the explanatory no. So it's a no that you place more or less at the end of the sentence, and it indicates that the sentence is giving some explanation. And so it's used a lot in oral speech, like they overuse it. This is why you are going to see it all the time. But still, let's try to understand how you can use it in details. So, when we say explanation, it's a little bit more subtle than this. So imagine two circles. Sorry for the paint drawing, but so the first circle represents what the speaker knows. The second circle indicates what the listener knows, and you see that there is a missing part in the circle. There is a hole. The hole indicates that the listener doesn't know something that the speaker knows. And so, sentences with nda will fill the gap. So the speaker will add nda at the end of his sentence to indicate that the sentence will fill a gap in what the listener doesn't know about the situation and that the speaker knows. So this is why we say giving some explanation. But you see that then it can be used in many situations, and it's not like a pure explanation per se in any situation. Most of the time it's very subtle, and for example in our sentence here, it is very subtle. But let's see a few examples. So the basic pattern is that you use a verb or an adjective, and then you add or no, it depends if you contract it or not, and then des, because of course da is des in plain form, but you can use it in polite form. So we studied in one of the previous videos that it was completely forbidden to use des after a verb that wasn't in a negation form. So be sure to place the n before it, because if you don't place the n or the no, then it becomes a grammar mistake. You can say, for example, shigoto ga aru desu. This doesn't exist, okay? You can add des just because you are adding the explanatory no. So the whole expression is des or no des or nda no da. And so it gives the sentence an explanatory vibe, or it can express a realization. So I will explain why later. So for example, 行きたいけど仕事があるんです. So I want to go, but I have work to do. So you see that you use ndes to give some explanation to the listener. The listener doesn't specifically know that you have a job to do, or he knows it, but you kind of remind him, you're giving him a good explanation for why you are not going. You want to go, but like, I have a good reason, I have an explanation, so I'm telling you, I have work. and thus I can go. Then, 勉強したんだよ. So for example, your mother comes home and she sees that you are playing video games. And of course, it's your mom, so she wants you to study. So she tells you, oh my god, what are you doing again? Why are you playing video games? You should be studying. But it happens that you've actually done your homework before starting playing video games. You studied, and so you tell her, 勉強したんだよ. I did study. So here, the mother lacks the information that you studied. And so you want to fill the gap in her, well, let's say, knowledge of the situation. And of course, you can feel that you kind of have an emphasis effect too. You are really highlighting the fact that you are giving some explanation. So most often, when you use nda, you will add some kind of emphasis effect to the sentence too. Then, 北海道は寒いのだ. So you are going for a trip with a friend to Hokkaido. And she sees that you put a lot of warm clothes in your suitcase. And so she tells you, why are you doing this? Why so many warm clothes? And so you answer, well, Hokkaido is cold. So once again, you are kind of filling a gap in the listener awareness of the situation. The listener doesn't seem that he knows that Hokkaido is cold or he forgot it or anyway, but you want to explain what you're doing, giving like a good explanation, a good reason, a good tip also, you see? So you know some information that the listener misses, and you kind of brief him, you see, or keep him updated. Basically, that's the basic use of nda or ndesu. Then, いつ行くんですか? So here it's a question. So of course, when it's a question, it will kind of invert the whole thing. This time, you will indicate that you are asking for some explanation. So, when will you go? You can't really translate the ndesu here, but いつ行くんですか? It shows that you're kind of curious. You lack some information about the context. You really want to know. You really want the speaker to explain you. And so, んですか? いつ行くんですか? And then finally, いたんだ. So, this one will be a bit confusing because it will then mean, so you were here. You see, it's a realization, a sudden realization. So for example, you were supposed to meet in some place. All the friends have arrived, but you can't find the last friend. And so you look for him for like 5-10 minutes, and finally you find him. So you were here. You see, you spent 10 minutes looking for him, and actually he was just here. So when you find him, you're going to say, いたんだ. So this is a bit weird because in this situation, it is not the listener that lacks some information. It's the speaker. The speaker wasn't aware of the whole situation, and all of a sudden he gets the long-awaited explanation. So you were here. So we can still explain it with this knowledge gap thing, but here it's reverted. It's the speaker that lacks something, and he indicates that, okay, I got the information now. And you see, like, I'm a bit surprised. I realized something I didn't know. So this nda is like, it's big news. You see, it adds the nuance of it's big news, if we exaggerate a bit little to understand. So it filled the gap in what I didn't know. And so you share the fact that you didn't know with the listener. Anyway, once again, this nda is part of context grammar. So what I call context grammar is things that you will never know when to use them. Okay, so for example, nda, whenever you will say a sentence, you will wonder, should I use nda or shouldn't I use it? And you will never find the answer. On the opposite, though, when you will find nda in a sentence, it won't bother you because it won't prevent you from understanding what the sentence means, because it's just like a subtle nuance that you add to the sentence. So in some situations, you might not have a 100% accurate translation because you will just ignore it, for example, but you'll always get the main content of the sentence. So this is what I call context grammar. Things that won't bother you so much when you translate, but that will bother you so much when you want to speak. And so for this kind of grammar, I have a perfect Japanese saying to kind of summarize the situation. Narau yori nareyo, or narau yori narero. And it means literally, more than learning, get used to it. And so indeed it means that instead of learning something, instead of having someone that will explain you, that will teach you, just experiment it yourself again and again and again. And when you've experimented it 10,000 times, then you will get used to it. You will figure it out by yourself. This is what this saying means. And I don't think that it's a coincidence if this saying exists in Japanese. So really, for all these context grammar things, of course, I'm going to explain them, and you can read some other explanations, and I even recommend that you do it if you're really interested in these grammar points. But just read and read and read more and more and more Japanese, and you will see that at some point you will kind of figure it out, and then you will then use nda when you should use it, and you won't use it when you shouldn't be using it. Okay, so let's go back and study the last point that is going to bother you here. 面白おかしくやってみるよ. So, first, 面白おかし is a word that doesn't exist. It's kind of a pun. She combined 面白い and おかしい to make one adjective that is a bit funny, you see? So, 面白おかしい, funny, weird. So this you can ignore it. It's like just a made-up word. But what is interesting is that it ends with ku. So first, it's a thing that actually we should have studied much before. Adjectives can conjugate. And to conjugate them, you have to transform the final I into ku. So actually, adjectives are just like verbs. And so when you want to make a negation with an adjective, you never conjugate death. It would be a mistake. If you want to say it's not interesting, you can't say 面白いじゃない. It doesn't work. You should say 面白くない. And then, if you want to be polite, you can still add des, it is possible. But here, des is kind of empty. It's just here to show that your sentence is polite, and that's it. It's got no other purpose here. And so, let's see the conjugation in detail. So, the basic form, 面白い or 面白いです if you want to be polite. Then, you transform the I into ku, 面白く, And then you add the suffix that you want. So for the negation, it's nai. So 面白くない. Then for the past, it becomes 面白かった. Originally, it's supposed to be 面白くあった. So actually, you do have a ku, but it contracted. So it becomes 面白かった. Anyway, the I always disappears when you conjugate the adjective. And then for the past negation, 面白くなかったです, if you want to be polite. And so you see that actually it's more or less the same conjugation as for verbs when they are in plain form. And so this is why in a previous video I told you to learn every ending that you could have with verbs when they are in plain form, even if for the moment you still don't know how to add nai after a verb, because you have to conjugate it first. But these endings apply to any conjugations, and this is why you have to know them. And finally, the te form, because if you can conjugate an I adjective, then you can put it in a te form. It is possible. It will then be 面白くて. But here, it's not enough. It's not enough to explain this, because you have nothing after the ku. Absolutely nothing. Just have an adjective in ku form. When you have an adjective in ku form alone, it then transforms the adjective into an adverb. So what is an adverb? It's a word that gives precision on the verb action. So basically adjectives gives precision to a noun, but adverbs give precision on a verb. So it's more or less the same as the ly in English. You add ly to transform an adjective into an adverb. Bad, badly. Gentle, gently. Nice, nicely. Quick, quickly. Surprising, surprisingly. You see? So it's the same mechanism. So let's see some examples. 早く来て. So 来て, remember, comes from 来る, which means to come, to arrive, and it's an irregular verb. So it becomes 来て or 来た in te and ta form. So 来て is the imperative form of 来る. You see, a te form alone, it's an order. So 来て, come. And then 早く. So 早く, I bet that you already know it, that you've heard it all the time. Actually, it comes from 早い, an I adjective that means quick. And so when you change the I by く, it becomes the adverb, and so it means quickly. So 早く来て, come quickly. Then 東京に長く住んでいました. So 東京に住んでいました. I lived in Tokyo. And then you add a precision on this I lived. 長く. So here we can say longly because it doesn't exist, but like that's the meaning of it. I lived in Tokyo. You add a precision for a long time. So 長く住んでいました. Then 優しく言いました. So 言いました, remember, comes from you to say. So 言いました, she said it, or he said it. 優しく, gently. So you see, every time it adds a precision on the verb action. How did she say it? Well, 優しく, gently. A gentle way, you see? And then 楽しくやりましょう. So once again, it's a bit hard to translate, but let's do it funnily, literally. Let's do it funnily. So let's have fun. We're going to do it. And how are we going to do it? 楽しく, an enjoyable way. You see? So let's have fun. And so in our sentence, it's more or less the same as this last sentence. 楽しくやりましょう。面白おかしくやってみるよ。So 面白おかしく describes how you are going to do it. Okay, so try to translate this sentence. Basically, should be able to do it now. So ちょっと現実とは違うんだけど、so it will be a bit different from reality. んだけど, but with the nuance of んだ that indicates that she's kind of setting the context, you see, giving some explanation, as in setting the context. So like, I'm warning you, it won't be very realistic. Like reality is not like this. I'm telling you, I'm setting the context. But, けど, but, 面白おかしくやってみる. So, literally, we'll try to do it. やってみる. 面白おかしく, funny, weirdly. You see? So, how are we going to do it? Well, a funny way and a weird way. So remember that this てみる expression is used when you want to say, to try to do, to give it a shot, to give it an attempt. So they tried to redo a day at school of Hime-chan, and they tried to do it funny, weirdly, you see. So just one last precision. You have 現実とは. So the to particle, don't think too much about it. I indicated that 違う, the verb 違う works with the to particle, so just learn it by heart. But then you have a wa after the to particle. So know that you can combine wa with every particle, but o and ga. You can't say owa or gawa. If you use wa, you can't use o. If you use wa, you can't use ga. These two particles are then kind of hidden behind the wa, but they have to disappear. But you can say to wa, kara wa, de wa, ni wa, made wa, etc., etc. It is completely possible, and they use it very often. So when you do this, the first particle indicates the grammatical function, because it's like their job. And then the wa that you add after, okay, never before. The wa is always after, then adds a contrast effect, which is once again the job of wa. So basically, you can place wa almost everywhere. It's a very, very specific, special particle, which is not used as the other particles. So you can place it almost everywhere, while the other particles are not so flexible. You have to use them a specific way, and you can't do whatever you want to do with them. But so don't be surprised in a sentence you see Tokyo ni wa, kore de wa, koko kara wa, etc., etc. is completely normal. And once again, in many situations, you won't even translate it, because the contrast wa is most often very hard to translate in English, because once again, it's some context grammar that is very subtle. So once again, it won't bother you when you will want to translate. So we've done it! The introduction of the video is over. Now we can start the actual video, which will be, well, funny, as long as you appreciate Japanese humor. So see you next video!